Hi everybody, it's Andy and welcome again to my office in Modesto, California. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in California as well as New York. In this video, I'm going to go over a concept in the law called limited scope representation. So I'm going to talk about how that works specifically in California, but the concept of limited scope exists in other states as well. I know for a fact New York has it. Other states almost certainly will have it. You just need to check for the state or states that you're interested in. So that said, the concept of limited scope representation is probably best illustrated with an example. So let's say, for example, that you are in your kitchen and you are trying to make yourself a sandwich. Bear with me, this really is going somewhere. The sandwich making process, I guess, maybe starts with step number 1, getting all the ingredients out of the refrigerator, and ends all the way down the line at, say, step number 10, with you enjoying your sandwich. Maybe step number 11 is you doing the dishes afterwards, etc. So that entire process of making a sandwich, you can partition that out into very distinct steps, I guess, or groups, phases, buckets, whatever you want to call it. So for example, step number 1, getting all the ingredients out. Step number 2, washing the lettuce. Step 3, slicing the tomatoes, and so on and so on. So all of those steps could, at least in theory, be done by somebody else. So if you are, say, working with a friend and the two of you are trying to make a sandwich, maybe you get the bread out, maybe he spreads the mayonnaise on the bread, maybe he washes the tomatoes, maybe you slice the tomatoes, and then all of you kind of, like all the steps kind of come together, resulting in the sandwich that you and your friend are enjoying. So that concept of taking a big long process and breaking it out into distinct segments or chunks, phases, whatever you want to call it, that concept applied to a court case is basically what limited scope representation is. So, for example, let's say that you have a divorce case in California and, the first step in the divorce case might be filling out the paperwork, the petition paperwork. Step number 2 might be filing the paperwork. Step 3 might be, serving the paperwork. All 3 of those steps are relatively easy. So if you're the party kind of doing the case, you can, in theory, do all 3 of those steps yourself. Step number 4, however, might be doing financial disclosures. I have a separate video actually that goes over the different phases in a divorce in California. I'm going to go ahead and link that right over here just in case you haven't seen it. You guys have no idea what I'm talking about. Pause this video, go watch that one, and then come back to this one if that's what you want to do. So of the 3 steps, those first 3 steps I mentioned, those are fairly easy. Step number 4, financial disclosures, sometimes called preliminary declarations of disclosure, or PDDs. Those can be more complicated. So a lot of times a party who's doing their divorce themselves, for example, will get stuck on the PDDs and not really know what to do. If you have a non-family law case, for example, let's say a car accident case, and there's discovery can be very complicated to do, so a lot of times parties are kind of stuck. They don't know what to do. So a lot of times parties will also think that, because they don't have $5,000 on them or $10,000 or something, they're not going to be able to get a lawyer interested. So the thing is, you have to have $5,000, right, in order to get a lawyer to help you. That's not necessarily the case. If you have $5,000, great, but that doesn't mean, if you don't have the $5,000, that doesn't mean you have to do your case on your own. There's a third kind of option in the middle, where if you don't have $5,000, but you have $500, maybe the $500 is enough, to get a lawyer to help you for an hour or two to do, your financial disclosures or to, respond to discovery, etc. So that's the big pro, I guess, for limited scope representation for the client. It allows them to get legal help to kind of get past, a minor kind of hump or obstacle in their case that's really kind of, bogging them down. So for example, you don't have $5,000, but for $500, you can still kind of get the same result, I guess. So I would imagine that more people have $500 than $5,000, so that's actually a fairly big pro, I guess, of limited scope representation. The other pro, I guess, for the lawyer's perspective, if you have a case as a lawyer that all you're doing is this one little distinct kind of group right here, that's actually a fairly appealing kind of thing, I guess. It's relatively low stress, if you want to call it that, because from the lawyer's perspective, he or she doesn't need to remember or worry about, I guess, anything that happened before, and he or she doesn't need to concern themselves with anything that's going to happen afterwards. All they need to do is this one little bit right here. So that's a very straightforward kind of task, I guess. So that's a pro for the lawyer. Those 2 big pros aside, there is one con. It is kind of a big con, unfortunately, as life is that way. So the big con here is that limited scope representation does not work in every case. Some cases, if you look at them, they kind of break out very neatly. There's very obvious kind of demarcations or borders between phase number 1, phase number 2, phase number 3, etc. So in that case, you can have a lawyer do steps 2 and 3, but not number 1. Or you can have the lawyer do steps 4, 5, and 7, but not 6. So that's actually very helpful, and that's when limited scope is the most useful. In some cases, however, there is no way to neatly define this is step 1 and this is step 2. Like step 1 and 2 kind of all blend together, so the thing is the whole case looks like one gigantic step. In that case, limited scope representation is not going to work for you, most likely. So that's the humongous con. Kind of a related con, I guess, or kind of drawback, is that there is no way to easily tell what kind of case limited scope representation works in. So there's no bright line rule that says, okay, for every divorce case, limited scope representation works. For every breach of contract case, limited scope representation doesn't work. There is no way to tell. You basically just have to look at your case. Maybe you can get a lawyer to do a free consult or something. You just have to analyze it on a case-by-case basis. So the two forms that you need, or actually one of two forms that you need if you are going to do a limited scope representation in California. Number one is if you have a family law case in California, there's a specific family law form called the FL 950. I have a separate video again on how to download forms like this. I'm going to go ahead and link it right over here. So the FL 950 is what you want, and you can get it by following the steps in that video. The second form is actually very similar. It's for civil cases, not family, in California. So the thing is, if you have like a car accident case, breach of contract case, and you are wanting to do limited scope representation, there's the MC 950 form. Again, you can also download it by following the steps in that video. So one of those two forms you're going to need to fill out if limited scope representation is something that lends itself to your case. And again, the idea behind limited scope is that you take the big long process from the very beginning of the case to the very end of the case, and you break it out into distinct kind of steps or phases, chunks, whatever you want to call it, and then you, the client, will do certain steps, and then for certain steps that are too complicated or that you're not comfortable with doing, you're going to hire a lawyer just to do those steps. And the benefit of that is that the lawyer can help you kind of get over like an obstacle or a hump that you don't know what to do with. But then once that obstacle is kind of overcome, you, the client, can then pick up the case and kind of run with it, hopefully until the very end. So that's the basic idea behind limited scope. Try not to make that too confusing. If it was too confusing, sorry, you can rewatch this video again. But hopefully limited scope representation is something that makes intuitive sense, and it's something that can help you out in whatever kind of case you have. So again, hopefully that helped, and I will talk to you guys next time. Go ahead and leave me a comment below if you want. I'm also going to link the FL 950 and MC 950 forums below, just in case you need some way to kind of get them really quickly. So, okay, hope that helped, and I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks.